right. Um, so good morning and welcome to our last class for this section. I'm excited for this class. I'm excited for this class because we've been talking about the ways that we can build up our own practices, our sense of safety, our self-defense. And today we're going to talk about how we bring that into a social context, into an interpersonal conflict context with de-escalation. And because it's the last class, I really wanted to make sure that you have some continuity of what comes next, right? You did this class, you did this part. What comes after? Because what comes after is very important. What comes after is the way that you make this your own, the way that you implement it in your life. And I want to give some support there as well. And I wanted to check in with our bodies first and kind of return to the first grounding practice, the first breathwork practice we learned, which is Wise Owl Turns Its Head. When I was getting my black belt, on the black belt test, you have to do every single technique in the entire system on the left and right side. There's several hundred, and it's thousands of steps long. And towards the end of the test, you do the test goes backwards, right? You start with the high belts, you do those, and you work your way to the white belt. The last part of the black belt test is the white belt. And not only was it the white belt, the very first things that I learned in that system, but all of the techniques I did in order backwards, meaning that the last technique of my test was the very first technique that I learned. So I wanted to share that with you today. We're going to go back to the beginning. We're going to go back to the first thing we learned, which is Wise Owl Turns Its Head. And if you need a reminder, here it is. We're going to open our arms to the side and look over our shoulder. On the exhale, bring it to center. My arms are at a 90-degree angle and they're just sitting low. Inhale, we expand. Exhale, come back to center. And as we're going through this, bring your attention towards your center line. Let nothing rush you. Move at your own pace. Expand your breath, connect to the earth. See if we can find some settling down and back. Remember, a little helpful tip is to pretend you have a tattoo or a sticker on your inside of your elbow. And when we open up our arms, we're exposing that little marker, whatever that might be. Remove as much effort from this as you can, for that is how we know we are embodying and not forcing this. Let your movements be natural. Perhaps let a smile find its way to your face. Find some release. Find some nourishment. I'm going to repeat just one more rep on the left and right side. Finding your chi, releasing tension, and cultivating, as we always do, a sense of relaxed awareness. And when you feel satisfied with that practice, feel free to bring some warmth to your body, maybe shake it out. You might remember this from the ball exercise, right? All these practices can be mixed up together, depending on your own energy, the way you want to use them. But let's check in. If you feel like sharing in the chat, I would love to know, how is your energy feeling today? After we did that wise owl practice, after we got our grounding in, how do you feel in this moment? And if I can share how I'm feeling, while we're kind of sitting, feeling into our own experience. I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling grateful. I've been teaching a lot this week. And I'm really looking forward to sharing some of the things that have been percolating over the course of this class with you. So yeah, how we're feeling. I see good. I did some physical practice this morning as well. Yay, good for you. And I feel grounded and refreshed for the day. Wonderful, wonderful. I'm glad that that personal practice is setting you up for a good day. I see, love how that practice opens things up so gently. Yeah, I do too. I do too. Wise owl, so wise, so gentle. It is one of the most surefire ways, foolproof ways for me to gather my breath. I've had a lot of chest tightness in my life, and this is one way to help open that out without feeling, like you're forcing anything. I see, and I feel anticipation energy in my head, full in my belly, feet more open than earlier today. That's a great head to toe assessment. I really want to just appreciate you for thinking so thoroughly about your whole body, your whole being. So today, and any other thoughts that are coming in, please feel free to drop them in the chat. But I wanted to start with the last part of our self-defense teaching, actually, and this is sort of I would say the culmination of all these things we've been working over the past 5 weeks, 6 weeks rather, 6 whole weeks. When we shift from taking care of our energy into influencing and shaping and changing the energy around us, that takes a lot of balance. It takes a lot of knowing your center. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of practice. So I wanted to offer some strategies for how to de-escalate for personal and group settings. I received a question about that in the survey, and I think that framing those two as different things is a really important place to start. But I see one more comment, I want to read it. I'm feeling some tension where my neck meets my back. I've also been really busy this week, so I'm feeling a little sleepy. I love Wise Owl and how accessible and gentle it is. Do take care of your sleepiness. Do take care of your sleepiness. If during this class you need to take a nap, there's a recording. I won't fault anyone for resting. I really won't. But I'm glad that you're here. Thank you for sharing this space. And we can also take a self-massage moment. We can also take a self-massage moment. Because I also get tension right in here. So as I'm kind of going through these practices, feel free to love on yourself, right? Give yourself what you need. So de-escalation strategies 101. We're going to be talking about how we can use different strategies for personal versus group settings, but I think it's important to mention that the overall strategy remains somewhat the same. So here's how to de-escalate anything. The place we start is finding our mutual interests. So if you want to imagine that, let's take a personal example, right? There's you and there is someone else. And there is some sort of impending or broiling conflict, or trying to prevent a conflict. Think of both of you as two circles in a Venn diagram. The place where you meet, where you're interacting in this moment, that's the overlap. But both of you are still full beings, full circles, right? You just have merged into this overlapping space. If we can distill, if we can listen to the situation and find out, what do we both want here? Both of you have different ideas of how to get there. Both of you have different ideas of how to get there. But what we're trying to find is that overlap. This is nonviolent communication 101 as well. And if you want a great primer on how to decolonize nonviolent communication, check out my friend, their name is Serendib, and they have this whole workbook. Their name is Minachi, sorry. Last name Serendib, I believe. But Minachi has this wonderful workbook on decolonizing nonviolent communication. And that is one of the principles, find your mutual interest, because both of you have different ways of getting there. And if one of you is deciding that your way is the only single way to do that, and I'm looking at us too, because we're guilty of this as well. We're like, this is the way it's supposed to be. I know it's supposed to go this way. We need to release some of that and look for that overlap. Right? So find that mutual interest. That's the first part of de-escalating. Find that mutual interest. This also works in, if anyone ends up working in like hostage negotiation, de-escalation of like high scale violence, that principle is the same. And we get that by active listening. So remember when I said presence is protective? If we are present, we can listen. If we are not present, we are projecting or assuming most of the time. So presence, that's why we've been practicing presence for this entire class, so that we can do what we're doing right now, which is find that overlap and de-escalate. Okay, so that's the first part. Overlap. What is your mutual interest? The second part of de-escalating is to find the creative strategy to move both of you to a win-win as much as possible. There is not always a win-win situation. There isn't. But if we're not looking for the win-win, we won't find it. If we assume it doesn't exist, we won't look for it, right? We have to be looking for that mutually beneficial, we both get what we want situation. And that means that for us, we have to know, how do I frame this? If we are trying to change someone else because we are uncomfortable with how they're doing things, that is not a win-win. That's ego. You haven't found your win. You're just trying to fix someone else. So find what the win is for you. What is your win? What do you want? What do they want? How can we both get there? Now, the tricky part is, right, not everyone's cooperative. For this to work, you have to have kind of a two-way communication. So there will be situations where we try to de-escalate and it might fail. It might fail. It might succeed. More often than not, we can de-escalate non-violently. In most situations, violence is a last resort. But that's why I spent very little time on the parts where we can use violence in the last class, right? Because that's a sliver. That's not our first line of our defense. That's our last. So let's walk it back a little bit, right? So we have de-escalation, we have finding that mutual interest, and we have finding the win-win. So how do we do that in real life, in real practice? I want to actually start with a group example, because I can teach you these formulas and these approaches and these strategies, but the tactics are up to you. Okay, there's a difference, right? Strategy is, here's kind of like a header, right? This is our orientation. This is where we're going. This is like things to keep in mind. Tactics change. Tactics are situationally based. If I give you tactics and no strategy, you're going to go out there into the world, try to employ the tactics, and you may be very annoyed with me because they won't work. They won't work. Fights, conflicts, interpersonal dealings are not a standardized test. I can't tell you what to do for every situation because there's no one right answer. There is an infinite possibility of answers, and you are the best person to solve them. You are the best person to find that tactic that works for you. Because I don't know what your win looks like. I don't know what their win looks like. But between starting with you, not me telling you what to do, starting with you, you will be able to find what is that win for you and keep aligned with it and protect it, because that's also your center line, right? So, slight tangent. Let's go back to groups, right? So if we have a group setting, you get sometimes a group or mob mentality. You get a hive mind. People spin each other up. It's easy to have panic that escalates because energy is contagious. Fear is contagious. So for groups, best way to disrupt conflict is to disrupt that mentality. And for that, I'm going to tell you, how do I win a fight? How do you win any fight? I actually mentioned this in the last class, right? Don't fight the other person's fight. Don't do what you think you're supposed to do based on that behavior. Be unexpected. Challenge what's happening by acting differently. Move towards your own orientation of a win. Move towards a solution that's mutually beneficial. So I wanted to share a strategy that I thought was really clever, and it came from actually I'm going to call them a community member. But they're a teacher at the martial arts temple where I also study. So I still go to classes. I'm still learning. But there's a Kung Fu teacher there who used to run with a really rough crowd, still runs with a really rough crowd. But they're a white boy who lives in Long Beach. And if they're going from like different hood to different hood, people notice the white boy in Long Beach who's going from different hood to different hood. So he's been in some unsafe situations for himself, but he always made friends. He always found a way to like connect to the community. So somebody knew him, right? Someone could vouch for him. But he had this really interesting way of addressing group violence. So if he was at a party, if he was seeing that something's about to pop off, right? People are watching a conflict escalate. Someone could die. That is the type of situation that they were observing. What he would do is run through the party and yell, 5-0. This will not work for everyone, but it's a great example of nonviolent de-escalation, right? The party dispersed. Nobody wants the cops there. That is a creative solution to a de-escalation that requires people to get some distance, right? If that conflict continued to percolate, someone could die. Or the cops could actually get called and other things could happen, right? That would bring on more violence. So I thought that strategy was really interesting. His tactics would vary by the situation, but the strategy is disrupt quickly. Remember what I said last time? The best way to win a fight is what? Quickly, quickly. Chop, chop, in a hurry. Get out of there. Fights are exhausting. Have you ever been in a fight? God, they take so much energy. Have you ever sparred? It's exhausting. A lot of fights last, it feels like a long time, but sometimes several seconds, a minute, 2 minutes tops. But I don't want you to be in there. I get out, move, end it quickly, right? For interpersonal strategies, we have a similar approach because there still is that mutuality of interest. The difference here is if you are engaging with someone and you need to de-escalate, we start kind of by listening, if we can. If if we can find space to listen to what they're trying to, like what they want, and maybe they don't know what they want, we can bring in some, whatever that de-escalation might be. I want to share an example of how this works. There was a bus, a school bus. No, it's not a school bus, a city bus near an Army boot camp training area that got hijacked. This bus got hijacked by a soldier who was actually a recruit. The soldier went AWOL, they ditched their training, they hijacked this bus. They were armed. This bus was full of school children, school-aged kids, kindergartners, babies, little ones, itty bitties on this bus. Bus driver driving, gets hijacked. This person wanted to get to the next town. They wanted to get away. They held the bus hostage so that they could get away from their problems. They were running. And it was not the bus driver, but actually the kids who saved the day. There's a happy ending to the story. All right, we'll start with that. They moved all the kids to the front of the bus for safety, mostly because I want to say for safety. It's so that the hijacker could keep an eye on them. So move everyone to the front. And the kids did something really interesting. And I want you to remember this because this is important. The kids did something interesting. They started asking him questions. He said, "You're a soldier. Why are you doing this? Do you want to hurt us? Are you going to kill us? Why are you doing this? What do you want? This doesn't seem right. What are you trying to do?" And the bus driver, who was actually trained in hostage negotiation, knew that his role was to actively listen, not panic, and to check this person, right? They were telling them, "Look, I want you to get what you want, but this bus only goes so fast, and the next city is miles and miles away. I can't get you there faster." And the hijacker actually gave up. They got off the bus, they left. They were apprehended later, but no shots fired, no one hurt, no one injured, completely non-violently de-escalated by a bus driver and a bunch of school kids. I think that's inspiring. That gives me hope. That is the skill and practice, right? It's not about, right? It's surprising, right? It's like, whoa, this person was armed, and listening is what de-escalated the situation. So I want us to kind of sit with that for a second, because we have so many messages about what self-defense is supposed to be, that it's supposed to be, I need to know all the weapons, I need to know all the training, I need to be able to have my head on a swivel and be able to punch out whoever is coming at me. What about listening? How attuned are we to facing our own panic, practicing that every single day, never miss a practice, so that if we need it, if we are in that pinch, if we are in a crisis situation, we know how to breathe, we know how to observe, we know how to make peace with that situation and find the way through, right? So I wanted to check in, because that's an example of that turning the situation on its head, right? Being unexpected. They didn't all jump the hijacker. They didn't do that. They didn't attack him. They treated him like family. Family members can go off the rails sometimes. They wanted to take care of them in their own way. They weren't trying to hurt this person back, even though they were threatening violence towards them. Not every situation will have that ability, but even in this situation, there was that opportunity. If we look for it, if we are prepared to find it. So I wanted to kind of put this together with another question that I heard from the survey, which is, how do I experiment with different strategies for dealing with stress besides my default response to conflict? I don't know if someone in here is the one who typed that in. I don't know anyone's comments. They're all anonymous to me. So I'm going to ask whoever this person is, whatever your if you are trying to challenge some of your default settings in response to conflict, because I've been there, my default was freeze. I've experienced a whole lot of things in my time, right? I grew up in an abusive household. I grew up with a lot of emotional abuse. I have experienced sexual assault. I have experienced an eating disorder. I have experienced a whole lot of stress. I have been deployed. I have been in outbreak situations. I have had a whole lot of experiences that have shaped my stress response. But I can tell you this, overwhelmingly throughout my life, my conditioned response was freeze. Freeze, not just in my body, but in my face. Freezing in my face was very apparent when I began dancing and noticed that I looked like a shark. My face wasn't moving, right? So if you are finding yourself, as I have, wanting to challenge some of your conditioned responses, here is my advice. Because I will walk with you. I will walk with you hand in hand, because I've walked this path too. But you're going to need to do the steps. And I know it's scary, but we're going to do this together. Okay, so here's my advice. If you are wanting to challenge those conditioned responses and try something different, the first piece of advice I will give is to follow your fear. Follow your fear. Who told me this? Tina Fey. Short story, I met her in New York. I was interviewing her for a weird contest that I won. Long story, problematic, fine, but I got some great advice, right? I really looked up to Tina Fey as somebody who was like a comedian, who had an improv background, who was a writer. And politics aside, it was a really exciting moment for me. And I wanted to ask her, like, what advice do you have? What is something that you have learned? What do you live by that guides you to these big opportunities? And she said, this is from her improv background. Just follow your fear. We all kind of know what our fear sounds like, right? Our fear says, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm going to get hurt. I don't want to do that. Someone's going to laugh at me. I don't want to do that because they might cast me out. I might lose something. Fear has a voice, right? Fear is a running narrative of thoughts that's conditioned by our past, right? Fear is shaped by our experiences. So listen to your fear. We're not running from it. We're going to listen to it. What is my fear saying? And if it is coming up, if that fear is being activated when you have a response to something, follow your fear, because that's where that crucial moment of doing something different is going to show up. If you do not follow your fear, you will do the same thing because you are avoiding, right? You are moving away from fear. And I also want to put this out there. It's okay to not, like, if you're scared because a bear is going to attack you, move away from the bear. Don't do like, I was supposed to follow my fear, so I jumped into its arms. Like, don't do that. Within reason, please. But follow your fear is a really great way of challenging ourselves when we get in our own way. Because it lets us see, what would my actions be if I wasn't afraid? Many of us decide our actions based on a fear response, not what we authentically want, but because we are acquainted, we are familiar with the outcomes of fear. So we do the same stuff again, 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 and again. I'm going to share something a little personal. I hope that's okay. But I recently went back home And this is a big deal because I've been estranged from my family for about 7 years. I have not been invited back home in about 6. I've been disinvited from holidays. I've been disinvited from family gatherings. This was the first time that I got to go home. And this was 2 weeks ago. When I went home, I found something really eye-opening. I found my journals. I found my journals from when I was 15. And if you want a humility check, read your journals from 15 years old. See your unfiltered teenage angst come pouring out. And I did. And it made me cringe. But what I wanted to share this for is because I was reading detailed notes from one of my lowest points in my life. I was deep, deep, deep in an eating disorder. And in this particular journal entry, I think it was June 12th, 2003. It's 2003. In this particular entry, I was having a nervous breakdown. And I was writing everything that came out of my head, all of those fear talks, everything that had a filter that I kept inside all the time came pouring out. I think I'm ugly. I hate my body. I feel worthless. I have no self-esteem. Why am I like this? Why won't anyone notice me? Why won't anyone see me? I've been starving myself for a year and no one came to check on me. All that pain, all that neglect came out. And this is humbling to me, deeply humbling, because I looked at that and I went, this is the same shit I'm working on in therapy 17 years later. I'm still in this story. That's not quite true. I'm not in that story anymore. I know where I was, and it was quite recent. That is where my fear kept replicating. I have proof. I know my life. I know that trajectory. I know every time I picked that action again and again and again and again, it became familiar. I was scared to do something different, right? Afraid to be seen, afraid to have my needs met, afraid to ask. So when we start to follow our fear, it will be uncomfortable. It is hard to let those stories go. It is hard to stop reaching for the thing that feels so familiar that it actually feels safe, but it's not actually safety. Familiarity and safety are not the same things. They can be. We can make safety familiar, but familiarity itself is not inherently safe. So I want to add on to this, right? This might resonate for some of you. It might not. Let me know if this lands. But follow our fear. Sorry, my dogs are barking. I'm pet sitting. We have another dog here. The other thing that I wanted to share with you, because we're going to be moving out of this container, this class container, and you're going to be in the world, right? We're not going to have these weekly sessions unless you come back and join the next cohort where we're going to be continuing. But I want to share something with you, because the other piece of advice I want to give is to trust the fall. Trust the fall. What do I mean by that? So a little bit about me also. I used to train with the San Diego Circus Center. I did aerial silks. That was my apparatus. If you don't know, if you haven't seen silks before, think Cirque du Soleil, like the big fabric 2-strand silks that are anchored about 30 to 50 feet plus feet up in the air, very, very high. And if you've seen performers use silks, right, you have to climb, you do these elaborate kind of knots and wraps, you tie yourself up, and then you somersault out of them. You fall, you drop to the earth, and you're caught by the fabric. It took me years to learn this. But here is the one thing that I learned from this practice that I want to share with you, and this is why it's so important to trust the fall. biggest source of injuries, barring like an apparatus failure, right? That would be a catastrophic like break in the silks. Barring that, right? The most common injury, the most that a beginner in particular gets hurt is when they don't trust the fall, where they climb up, they wrap themselves up. They might not even be that far off the ground. They do their wraps, right? They're secure, but they're not on the ground anymore. They're off the ground. They're holding on. Usually you hold on or hold yourself into your wrap, and you have to let go. You have to. If you resist, if you fall and reach back, you're going to dislocate your shoulder. If you fall and try to get back up right, you're going to slip out of your wrap and possibly fall 10, 20, 30 feet to the ground. If you do not trust the fall, you will get hurt while reaching back for that thing that you thought was safety. Safety comes with trusting the process. Safety comes with that surrender. We have to let go. So I'm going to ask you, what are you holding on to? What are you still holding on to? I know that we're talking about taking ourselves into a different pattern, trying something new. When you feel yourself starting to be like, hey, I think I see the path that I've been on. I'm following my fear. I'm about to take that step, but what are you reaching back for? Name this. Name this. Because I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want you to get hurt. If we keep reaching back, that's not safety. That's an illusion. That's habit. And we might actually arrive at kind of the same conclusion, right? Maybe we are trusting the fall and our body wants to get back to this. Maybe we fall and grab it again, and that's okay. But there has to be a release. We don't walk around. Here's a really great example. We must release, right? We exhale, we push away, we say no. We inhale, we bring it in, we say yes. We exhale, we say no. We inhale, we take it in, we say yes. Not a single one of you walks around like this. It's uncomfortable to hold on when we're not supposed to. We must release. We must release. So the next part after this class, after this cohort ends, I'm going to ask you, what do you need to release? What is getting in your way of implementing something different? Because once you learn how to trust the fall, that's self-trust. That's that self-trust that we've been talking about all this time. When you know you've got your back, when you tumble out of that for the first time and you check and you go, I'm still alive. That's self-trust, right? When you trust the fall, you say no, period. And then maybe you're a little scared. And you don't rush in with babbling excuses, apologies, walking it back. You stand in your truth, you face your fear, and you do the thing. And it is successful. That's self-trust, right? You've just gained like a token in this jar deposited, where now your body and mind are starting to trust one another. And we can't do that without risk. We can't do that without letting go. It won't happen. It just won't. It's incompatible. I want you to be your own rescue. There's a motivational speaker named Lisa Nichols. I'm very fond of. She's an amazing speaker. But she has this saying of be your own rescue. Does anyone know Lisa Nichols, by the way? pop a hand if you do. Be your own rescue. I'm saying this with no ego, right? I have studied martial arts for a long time. I was and still am one of the best students that came out of my system, right? I know this. I have awards. I have accolades to prove it. I had my fastest test. I beat my school's record for fastest test. Did it in an hour and 33 minutes, every single technique in the system. I burned through them. I did the last part completely by memory. They couldn't call them fast enough for me. I did that shit, right? I got to the black belt in the fastest time in my school system, 3 years, 9 months, and 16 days. No one has beat that record. I did that shit. And yet, when my life fell apart, when my relationships fell apart, when I left the military and I had no sense of what to do if I wasn't taking care of other people, I fell apart. None of those techniques that I learned, all that strength, all that fighting didn't work because I didn't know how to be my own rescue. I knew how to rescue other people. I knew how to help other people. I knew how to attend. I knew how to give and give and give and give and give. And I was running on fumes, but they were strong fumes. I did that shit too. When we take this practice and we make it personal, I want you to take your personal safety seriously. Be religious about it. Be spiritual about it. Protect your energy because it's sacred. And no one else is going to protect it more than you are. And I wish I could. I wish I could keep you from suffering. I wish I could prevent violence and harm. I wish I could protect all those things. I wish I could stand in front of you. I wish I could be your shield. I really wish I could, but that's not my job. That's not my responsibility. And that's not effective. I'm now centralizing myself in your problem. And that's unfair to you. So I want you to be your own rescue. Take what we've learned, build upon them. This is a beginner course. We just scratched the surface. I promised 3 things at the beginning of this course. One was how to create safety through requests and boundaries. We talked about that. Another was self-discovery, learning about ourselves through that rain check, right? Through navigating our different hyperarousal states in response to a risk assessment situation, learning about our responses. And practices for a nonviolent embodiment. That's Qigong. That's that energy work. Those are the 3 things that I wanted to impart to you. What you do with them next is up to you. And I absolutely, there is no doubt in my mind that you will succeed. I believe in you completely. I believe in you completely. I know you can do this. Even though you think you might not be able to, even though you're like, how am I supposed to stand up for myself in this way? How am I supposed to put these skills into situations where I'm having a panic attack? How am I supposed to X, Y, and Z? I believe in you. I want you to believe in you the way I believe in you, because that's what's important, right? Me believing in you from over here isn't the same. But know that I'm here believing in you. I know you can do it. I know you can. You absolutely can. You absolutely can. Because you have. You've shown me. We've talked about it. You have so much in your personal inventory of self-defense skills that you innately know. Go back to those. Build upon them. Those are gifts. Don't write them off and say, no, but I need techniques. No, but I need weapons. No, but I need another strike. You have everything you need. We just need to make them part of our life. We just put them to use. We practice them. So I do want to ask, and we're kind of closing in on the last few minutes of class today, and I want to ask, And it's okay if you don't have the words for it right now. And it's okay if you want to check in with me after. I want to ask, now that we are at the end of this course, have you learned something to help you feel safer? Have you learned something of value to help you feel safer? Because that's the point of this class for me. I want you to feel a little bit safer in your body moving through the world than when you started. However much that increment is, I can't control that, but I hope it's a positive. I hope you feel safer through what we learned, at least knowing that part. But do you feel safer? Are you satisfied with the information we learned? And know that I'm still your teacher beyond this course. If you're like, hey, Harmony, I'm trying this and I'm getting stuck, let me know. Ask for help. That's also part of this practice. If you need mentorship, if you need guidance, hit me up. I'm still your teacher. Still here for you. So that is my question to you. Are you satisfied with what you've learned? Do you feel a little safer? And the reason I wanted to talk about this, the reason when I talk about do you feel safer is there is a difference in how we show up to life if we feel safe. If we feel safe and understood and loved and cared for, there's a difference in how we show up. So another question that I have for you, and this is something to meditate on. When you are on this path, when you are walking this walk, moving this way, following this Tao, this way of doing things, right? I want you to ask yourself, how would I show up if I felt safe? How would I show up if I felt truly safe? If I was not making actions and decisions based on fear and scarcity, if I felt safe, safer, how would I show up? If we can remember that even though we're moving through fear, even though it's the scariest fucking thing in the world to do things differently, I know it's scary. I was terrified. I was terrified of ending relationships that I held on to for so long. I was terrified to let go. But it was necessary. But remember, what do we stand to gain by releasing? What's on the other side? So I see a yes. Yes, mostly in the sense that if something makes me feel unsafe, I now feel like I can seek out options to make myself feel more protected. I'm glad that you feel that way. Before, I was mostly resigned to feeling like bad things happen to everyone. I can't prevent them. I just have to accept that they will come eventually. Right, I want you to take agency. I'm glad that you said that, right? Bad things do happen. We do know that threats are out there. We are very aware of the unsafety of the world. But I'm glad that you now know that you have options. You have things you can pull from. You can move, right? We don't have to just stand there and wait to get hit. We can move. I see another yes, 100%. The grounding techniques have pulled me out of panic attacks many times throughout this time. I'm guessing it's the time of the class. And I can take these skills with me into the future. I also think it gave me the embodiment and connections to self to leave an abusive job situation and believe I can follow my dreams. This is a big part of safety to me. I could cry. I could actually cry. I think I'm going to. But that's why we do this. That's why. Right? You deserve better. You don't have to settle for what's familiar and hurtful and harmful because we've tolerated so much pain. We don't have to. I see too, I'm crying. I have like an 100% cry rate in my classes. So I just know that it happens at some point. Um, but I'm so glad that you shared that. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that piece, because when we feel safe, we know that we can leave and we still got our back, right? We're not holding on because that's what we were taught and conditioned to do and endure. We challenge everything when we know that we deserve better and we can feel safe. So thank you for sharing that, right? Thank you for sharing that. And kind of in closing for today, because we are coming at the end of time and I got my cry. I want us to remember that we need to nourish ourselves, to come back to center. So the invitation is to do this from, you can have eyes open or eyes closed, but I'm going to provide some guided practice for us to close out this session, this journey together. So again, invitation, eyes open or eyes closed. And I invite you to breathe. I invite you to find connection with your center line. I invite you to find some release, to feel a sense of resting down and back, to feel supportive, to trust the earth to hold you, to perhaps feel your energy, where it sits inside of you. I invite you to release whatever needs to be released, whether that be a long exhale, a breath, or a thought that no longer serves you. I invite you to remember that this practice is a practice of finding our way back to ourselves time and time again. Because on this journey, you are the traveler. You are the journey itself, and you are the destination. We are finding our way back to our truest, most authentic selves. And that is a purpose that's worth practicing every day. It is an intention worth meeting with joy. And I hope that this practice gives you what you need to sustain that journey forward. Taking some moments for gratitude. I invite you to give yourself a hug, to hold yourself, to say thank you for showing up every time, even when it's hard, even when you're afraid, because you know that this is the right thing to do for you. We can say thank you to ourselves for putting in that work. And the invitation is to move very slowly, very gently, very aware and relaxed. Perhaps waking up the fingers and toes. Allowing ourselves to take in our surroundings, come back to this space, and find ourselves in community together. And I see a comment. I see another yes, which I would like to read. See, yes, I've been able to take away so much from your teachings, and I've also been more able to calm myself in moments of extreme anxiety. That's not easy. I'm really proud of you. I felt so disempowered and defenseless most of my life, and this has challenged that greatly. I feel confident despite also doubting myself to an extent, as that is familiar but not safe. Also, I was crying too, y'all. I'm a Cancer, but oof, this has been so embodying and so honest and so real. Thank you, Harmony. It's okay. It's okay to cry. If you're crying in this class, you are not alone. You are never alone. I have a lot of criers, starting with me. So I want to say thank you. I'm going to stay on for just a few minutes more. If anybody would like to chat one-on-one, I'm going to turn off the recording and end class here. I will be following up with y'all with emails, with upcoming resources, upcoming offerings, all that. Please stay in touch. Again, I'm still here for you. But that concludes our self-defense program. Congratulations. And I'm so proud of you for seeing this through. So give yourself a hand, give yourself a sparkle. And yeah, way to do it.